We have some potentially good injury news to get to on today's episode, and I'll explain all of that throughout the show. And we also have some roster moves to get you guys up to speed on. So before we look at any of that good stuff, make sure to subscribe to the channel, though. We are so close to reaching 37,000 subscribers. If you are not subscribed and you're looking for a free Browns YouTube channel, I invite you to go ahead and subscribe today. But let's start things off by getting you guys up to speed on the latest regarding Nick Chubb, because I'm sure, just like every single one of you watching, I wake up every day hoping to get some Nick Chubb updates and return timeline updates. So we have this. Kevin Stefanski, when speaking to the media today, was asked about Nick Chubb potentially returning soon, because if you guys remember, Chubb began on the PUP list, which means he is out for the minimum of the first 4 weeks of the season. We're entering week 4, so connect the dots. Maybe Nick Chubb comes back week 5. Stefanski said, we'll see when we get to next week. He's doing well. You can look at that one of a couple of ways. One, it's very non-committal. Two, he didn't say no, which is the way I'm looking at it, as maybe it's kind of a good sign, right? That he didn't just completely slam the door shut on Nick Chubb coming back as early as week 5. I sure hope we get Nick Chubb sooner rather than later, because this team desperately needs Nick Chubb back. Now, I am old enough to remember when Mary Kay did a Reddit AMA a few weeks ago, and she speculated that maybe we don't see Nick Chubb until week 11, which is a game in New Orleans after the Browns bye week, and maybe the Browns decide, hey, let's give Chubb the first 9 weeks to recover, and we'll deploy him after the bye. When it comes to when Nick Chubb's going to come back, I wish I had a definitive answer, and I wish I could tell you guys that I've got some ear inside of Berea, a fly on the wall feeding me intel right now. But your guess is as good as mine. I don't have a great insight as to when Chubb is going to return. I did not think he would open up the year on the PUP list based on the workout videos we saw over the summer. The guy was squatting 600 pounds in July, so you kind of start doing just like the napkin math of like 600 pounds in July, season begins early September. Yeah, he could be back mid-September, but no. So here we are now, just hoping and praying, because this team desperately needs him. I did some research. And what I found was, in the 18 games the Browns have played since he went down week 2 against the Steelers last year, they are averaging, as a team, 3.7 yards per carry, 15 touchdowns, 1,900 yards on the dot. In the 18 games before week 2 Monday night last year, with Nick Chubb, they averaged a whole yard more, 4.7 yards per carry. Nick Chubb and the Browns ground game put together, basically, let's call it 2,700 yards, okay? Nick Chubb's WAR is 800 yards. I mean, just look at it. Without Nick Chubb, they have 1,900 yards. With Nick Chubb, 2,700 yards. That's how valuable Nick Chubb is to this team. You can have Nick Chubb, or you can have any other running back, and it's going to be 800 fewer yards over 18 games. It's insane. I mean, 18 games is not very far off from a full season of 17. He is just that crucial. And it's kind of concerning that we've had a long time without Nick Chubb. Like, a lot of time has passed. A lot of games have been played. We've kind of learned to live life without Chubb. But the Browns have not learned how to live life without Nick Chubb, right? I mean, they're 18 games into the no Nick Chubb experience, and they really have not come up with any sort of replacement or solution at all. I feel like every single step of the way, I wouldn't call it temporary, but initially when Chubb went down, it was, hey, we're going to roll with Jerome Ford. Okay, yeah, sure thing. Next man up. Let's do it. That wasn't going so well. Trade deadline's coming up. Maybe trade for a running back. Nah, we're going to stick with Jerome Ford, and we're going to add Kareem Hunt. Okay, Kareem Hunt's kind of washed, but he can help out at the goal line, and he did help out at the goal line. Going into this year. All right, we kind of got through last year. It's tough to make midseason additions, but now you've got free agency. You've got the draft. What's the game plan? Well, we're not going to draft a running back. Okay, so is Nick Chubb coming back soon then? Yeah, we think so. Here we are. No Chubb. I feel like the front office somewhat failed when it came to properly addressing Nick Chubb's absence. And they were just either hoping he would come back sooner than he did, or they had way too much trust in a combination of Ford, Foreman, Hunt, and this offensive line. Now, make no mistake, there's no replacing Nick Chubb in the draft or free agency, but you can put together a much better ground game that doesn't take off a full yard from what Nick Chubb gave you. This is a game of inches. That's a lot of inches in a yard. That's the difference between, I don't know, maybe like a first down on a couple of fourth down plays against the Giants. So, pinned comment on today's episode. I do want to get your response. Will Nick Chubb save this offense? When he returns, do you feel like this is going to be the thing that really makes everything click and get into sync? Scroll on down. If an ad break comes on by, take advantage of it. Don't be a stranger. I'm giving shout-outs to everyone who does so. We have shout-outs at the end of today's episode. So type Y for yes, type N for no. Moving on to injury news piece number 2, Myles Garrett, who I'm just going to call a leg injury. It's an ankle, it's an Achilles, it's a thigh, it's everything. But it's Myles Garrett. You are going to have to drag him off the field, and I don't know of anyone that is strong enough to drag Myles Garrett off the field. So he is not practicing Wednesday. Stefanski told the media, quote, "I feel Myles is determined to continue to play." This honestly kind of feels like it might even be something that's out of Kevin Stefanski's hands. Like, Myles Garrett is just going to decide whether or not he plays. Now, every single week that has gone by, his snap percentage has gone down. And week 3 against the G-Men, he played a season-low 58% of the snaps. I'm all fine with, like, Garrett kind of beating to his own drum and whatnot, but I don't want to repeat 2023 Watson, where clearly the Browns and Deshaun Watson came back way too quickly in that Colts game and shut him down again. If the Browns decide, hey, you have to go on injured reserve to let your body get right and take 4 weeks off, don't make that decision 2 weeks from now after putting Myles Garrett on the field when he's ineffective and he's probably just making the injuries worse. And as a result, you're not going to get him back any sooner. Right? I don't want them to delay what is the inevitable. So if they feel like he needs to go on IR, let's just bite the bullet now and get it out of the way. What I don't want to see happen is Garrett plays 2 more games. He doesn't really play a ton, 50% of snaps. He's clearly not even close to 100%, and he aggravates whatever injury he is dealing with at the moment. And all of a sudden, what could have been maybe just a 4-week injury now turns into a 6, 7, 8-week injury. So let's learn from our mistakes last year. The Browns clearly brought Deshaun Watson back too quickly. They didn't really handle the entire injury all that well, and I would like to see them make the correction this year. If Garrett needs to go on IR, which maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, I'm not sure. I'm not Myles Garrett, but if that is the case, please, Cleveland, promise we're not going to make the same mistake twice as last year. So, clearly it goes without saying, if Myles Garrett were to miss some time, I mean, that is just a ginormous loss. I don't think anyone needs to hear that, but he is still a freak. 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 tackles for loss through 3 weeks so far. He has been, I believe, Pro Football Focus's highest graded defender so far this entire season. I know he was last week against the Giants. He was generating like a half a dozen number of pressures on Andrew Thomas, one of the best left tackles in football. I think the stat I saw was he generated like 7 to 10-ish pressures. Don't quote me, but somewhere in that range. And Andrew Thomas had not given up more than like 5 pressures the last 3 seasons or something like that. So yeah, I mean, there's no replacing Myles Garrett or anything like that if he does miss some time, but what I don't want is a waste of his time and a waste of our time. If he's not even close to 100%, he's making matters worse, and we could have had him back sooner. And for the important stretch of the end of the season, if we just bit the bullet right now, lost him for 4 weeks instead of gambling for 2 weeks and then losing him for 8 weeks. All right, we have some more injury news to get to in just a moment here, but I do want to give a quick shout out to our awesome sponsor for today's episode, Mando. Now, I started walking to work back in the spring because I was trying to get into a healthier lifestyle and trying to shed some poundage. And when I was coming into the office, I kind of already had a decent sweat going for my 1.5-mile journey. So thanks to Mando, I was able to make sure that all my desk mates weren't plugging their nose because of my stink. Because Mando's got the best whole body smelling deodorant in the business. And they were also giving the Dog Pound an incredible deal on this awesome package, which is $5 off their starter pack at shopmando.com with promo code CHAT. Now, the starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, plus free shipping. And like I said, I've got a discount code to help you guys get hooked up on my favorite smelling whole body deodorant on the market. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code CHAT. That equates, by the way, to over 40% off their starter pack when you use code CHAT at shopmando.com. Shopmando.com. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. But if you want to up your whole body deodorant smelling game, visit Mando today. They are a great supporter of ours here at the Cleveland Browns Report, so go support them as well. Moving on to our next piece of injury news. This one's not good news. The other two I was kind of hopeful could be good news based on Myles Garrett potentially playing on Sunday. But Wyatt Teller, we learned this earlier, placed on injured reserve. This is not a surprise. He is out for the next 4 weeks, and Zach Zinter will be your starting right guard for the next 4 weeks if I had to guess. What's kind of funny is looking at this depth chart right now, the only piece I'm confident in terms of who's playing where, is Zach Zinter at right guard. Now, Conklin, who created a new injury, a hamstring injury at the end of last week, that was not considered serious, so we might see him on Sunday, but both him and Jed Wills, who did return in week 3, but injured his knee, both are not practicing this week. James Hudson and DeJuan Jones, they are both dealing with injuries as well, although the belief is both of those guys will be ready to go. Germain Ifedi, by the way, was promoted to the active roster with Teller going to injured reserve. But as I was saying, the only guy I'm confident in terms of where he is playing is Zinter, the rookie out of Michigan at right guard. Last week, we saw the Browns end their offensive line looking like this. Petonio kicked out to left tackle. Posick moved over to left guard. Harris went back to what was supposed to be his original starting gig before a Jags ACL injury in the preseason at center, and then Jones at right tackle because James Hudson came in to replace Jones, who was a turnstile, but he might not even be healthy with this knee injury, so he had to go back to right tackle. So that's what we're working with up front. All we can do is just hope and pray that that unit starts to get healthy, because that, I think, is the only potential saving grace for this offense, because ultimately I feel like all the success and all the failure is going to come up front, and if you don't even have a halfway decent offensive line, then you're not going to create much of a run game at all, and that's going to make life as a passer 10 times more challenging. Now, the Browns made a handful of roster additions. Germain Ifedi, who was with the Browns during the preseason, he was promoted up to the active roster. They added 2 offensive tackles to the practice squad and a defensive end as well, probably because of Myles Garrett. Now, I say all this, and we should remind ourselves that the Browns are getting ready for a pretty good defense, like a very talented defense. Max Crosby is dealing with a high ankle sprain. He was limited in their week 3 loss to the Panthers. So, I mean, this kind of like feels like a chess game where both queens have been knocked out potentially with Garrett and Crosby. Christian Wilkins was that big splash free agent signing they had. He hasn't really done much, and hopefully he does not decide to wake up this Sunday. Tyree Wilson was a top 10 draft pick of theirs just 2 years ago out of Texas Tech. He has been underwhelming so far. And then the final piece of injury news, David Njoku, who has missed the last 2 games with an ankle injury. We are still waiting to see if he could play this Sunday. Stefanski really would not commit one way or the other, but I do think it's encouraging that he did not rule Njoku out for this Sunday like he did back in week 2 or going into week 2. So I'm sure they're going to let this week of practice play out, and if he can get onto the practice field, awesome. If not, we'll have to wait and see. But for now, we wait and see, and also kind of, I don't want to make the theme of this video just hope and praying, but when the offense has been this stagnant, and that's being nice and generous, you need all the pieces you can get back, right? You need all the playmakers you can get back. So let's just wait out the week here and see if Njoku can return to the field. But if not, I think Jordan Akins has done a really good job of filling in for the Chief at the tight end position. So if he does end up missing another week, it's not the end of the world. Now, who you got, by the way, for Sunday? Browns versus Raiders. I only want to see CLEs in the comment section because the crazy thing is, if you feel like the sky is falling in Cleveland, go look at the Raiders. I mean, they are one crazy fourth quarter comeback away from being 0-3 and a third loss coming from the Andy Dalton-led winless Carolina Panthers. Now, I do want to give some shout-outs to a couple of people I noticed in the comment section over the last 2 or so videos. Mr. G, Ghostface, Jeremy Weber, Emmett Kraft. Emmett's always commenting. Chris Lindsay, Turf Toro, John Fuller, Johnny, Jack, Mike, appreciate you guys for lighting up the comment section. If you ever want to get a shout out, hit up the comment section. We'll get your name on screen potentially at some point. Also, show some love to the Brown and Orange Club for all of their support this entire season. I mean, these watch parties are 5x, 10x, whatever X it is, better because of what you guys bring to the table. So thank you so much for going above and beyond to support us here at the Cleveland Browns Report. That's going to do it for us on today's episode. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing. It really helps grow the channel, and I'll see you all later.